During the early medieval period in the British Isles, warfare largely mirrored that of continental Europe, with one significant distinction. In its ultimate evolution, similar to the Franks, the Angles and Saxons, upon their conquest of Britain, were primarily an infantry-based society. They wielded long ashen javelins, broadswords, sea axes, and occasionally battle axes. Their primary means of defense was the shield, known as the round warboard, featuring a prominent iron boss. Although ringmail was recognized early on, it was exceedingly rare among the populace. The gray battle sark, or ring-locked hauberk, mentioned in Beowulf, was a privilege reserved for kings and nobles. Helmets adorned with iron boar crests were similarly limited in availability. While monarchs and their elite warriors donned such gear, the main fighting force of the Heptarch kingdom, composed of the national levy, typically lacked these armaments. Having remained largely undisturbed on their island for centuries, the English maintained traditional Teutonic martial customs longer than many other European nations. During conflicts between Mercia and Wessex, battles were fought by hastily assembled forces from various districts, led by their local leaders, the Alder and Reeves. When war erupted, it often exhibited a chaotic and minor nature, stemming from the temporary composition of these armies. With such a fragile military structure, there was little chance for the development of consistent and progressive strategies for conquest. The ongoing skirmishes among the kingdoms, though fierce and relentless, rarely yielded decisive outcomes. By the 9th century, any signs of unification in England were not due to Wessex's military dominance, but rather the decline of royal dynasties and the unfortunate internal strife plaguing other states. As the desire for unity was taking shape, the entire island found itself under the strain of the same turmoil caused by foreign invasions that were shaking the very foundations of the Frankish Empire. The Danish Vikings launched their assaults on England, showcasing through their devastating raids that the traditional Teutonic military system was no longer sufficient for the challenges of the time. The Vikings proved to be more formidable than the forces opposing them, excelling in tactics, weaponry, training, and agility. The Dane was essentially a seasoned warrior from an ancient warband, facing off against a farmer who had just left the plow, a battle between an experienced soldier and an untrained militian. As a professional fighter, the Dane was equipped with gear that only the elite of the English army could match. The mail hauberk was a common form of protection, while the steel cap was nearly ubiquitous. In contrast, the English forces confronted the Danes with little armor, wielding a hodgepodge of weapons that included spears, swords, clubs, and stone axes. Had the Dane Vikings waited for local forces to confront them, the equal bravery and greater numbers of the English might have overcome the advantages of their equipment. However, the Vikings were primarily motivated by plunder rather than combat. The English troops would gather in specific coastal areas, while the Danes, mounted on their horses, roamed extensively across the land, wreaking havoc wherever they went. The horses they had captured granted them a speed of movement that the English could not match. By the time local forces arrived at the last known location of the invaders, they would only find remnants of destruction, smoke, and ruins, but no enemy in sight. When the Vikings were pushed to the sea, despite their usual retreats, they displayed an instinctive tactical prowess by utilizing entrenchments, a strategy the English were ill-prepared to counter. Positioned behind ditches and palisades in strategically advantageous locations, the invaders could wait for months until the English forces gradually dispersed back to their homes. The Danes showed remarkable bravery in the face of attacks on their positions. Their line of axemen consistently managed to repel even the boldest charges from the English troops. For every successful assault on a fortified camp, there were 2 fierce counterattacks that pushed the assailants back. After 30 decades of defeats, the traditional military structure of the nation faced a grim reality. A force greater than the English fyrd was necessary to take on the well-organized warbands of the Vikings. The fyrd, a militia system in Anglo-Saxon England, was defined by its local character and the duty of military service required from every able-bodied free man.
It was likely the alderman or sheriff who had the duty to call upon and lead the fyrd. The social impact of the invasion in England resembled that of the Frankish Empire, as free peasants sought refuge under the protection of local landowners. By accepting this protection, the thanehood assumed the responsibility for the defense of the realm. In England, the king's authority was more centralized than in the Frankish lands, which hindered the rapid rise of feudalism. Instead of being paralyzed by fear, Alfred and Edward opted to harness the changes to create a new military system. As a result, all landholders of 5 hides were mandated to provide thane service, laying a solid groundwork for the national army to strengthen. In this military force, the fyrd was split into 2 divisions, ensuring that one division was always on standby for service. These tactical decisions led to remarkably positive results. The balance of power in the war shifted, enabling England to reclaim its supremacy. English King Athelstan led a well-equipped and prepared army and defeated a formidable coalition force that had allied against him at the Battle of Brunanburh in 937. The outcome of the battle eventually led to a unified English kingdom, erasing fears that the country would again be divided into separate realms. The thane, much like the Frankish noble in his military capacity, became the central figure in combat. Dressed in a mail shirt and steel helmet, armed with a sword and a long pointed shield, the bands of chosen ones were ready to face and overcome the Danish axemen. It's crucial to recognize that the military difficulties encountered by the English had been significantly elevated by the settlement of the invaders within the Danelaw. An enemy with towns to burn and farms to plunder can be pressured in ways that are impossible against a raider whose activities are conducted at sea. Notably, Alfred used the same fortified structures against the Danes that had been employed by his ancestors. The stockades of his new burghs were managed by local Urals from the fortified 5 towns, while the king concentrated his main forces in other areas. A century after Alfred's military reforms, the feudal threats that had once fragmented the Frankish Empire began to surface in England. The influential aldermen during Ethelred's reign resembled the counts of Frankish King Charles III's time as they evolved from official positions into roles akin to minor princes. This transition occurred alongside the weakening of the central military framework, resulting in a scenario where the forces of individual aldermen, reeve, fought independently, lacking support from nearby areas, especially during the resurgence of Danish invasions. England likely escaped the same destiny as France thanks to Canute's ascension to the throne. This ruler not only restored the provincial governors as the crown's representatives, but also strengthened his power by creating the housecarl, a military unit substantial enough to be regarded as a small standing army rather than just a royal guard. These soldiers represented a strong central authority and embodied the height of military prowess in the Anglo-Danish domain. Their combat techniques and armaments were notably different from the feudal nobles on the continent, against whom they would soon face off. Equipped with the long Danish battle axe, with a 5-foot handle and a large single-bladed head, these fighters were unable to engage in mounted combat due to the weapon's heft. The design required both hands, rendering shields and armor largely ineffective. In terms of protective gear, the English axemen resembled the cavalry from across the Channel, wearing a long mail shirt that reached the lower thigh and a pointed steel helmet with a nasal guard. The English axemen employed a column formation. When arranged in a tight group, they could effectively withstand almost any attack and break through various obstacles. Their physical strength, composure, confidence, and camaraderie made them formidable adversaries. However, their formation had 2 notable vulnerabilities: limited mobility and a susceptibility to ranged attacks. When faced with cavalry, they had no choice but to hold their ground to protect their defensive line. Likewise, when light infantry launched attacks from a distance, they were at a disadvantage, unable to pursue enemies who fell back before them. In 1066, at the Battle of Hastings, this axemen formation encountered its toughest test. They experienced a significant defeat against the invading troops of William the Conqueror, which comprised both cavalry and archers. This battle signified the rise of cavalry supremacy, leading to a profound shift in the dynamics of medieval warfare.